The missiles are already in the air before anyone in the Combat Information Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln even thinks about reaching for a weapons release. 12 Iranian-made anti-ship cruise missiles, sea-skimming at Mach 0.8, launched from a coastal battery along the Strait of Hormuz at 3:12 in the morning. Every radar operator in the strike group is watching them come in real time. 12 tracks, 12 threats, closing fast. And then the carrier's commanding officer gives an order that nobody in that room has ever heard during a live missile engagement. Hold all interceptors. Do not launch. Let them come. That order is either the most confident decision in the history of American naval warfare or the last order he ever gives. In roughly 4 minutes, everyone in that room is going to find out which one it is. To understand why he gave that order, you need to understand what was already airborne before a single Iranian missile ever left its launcher. Because 23 minutes before Iran fired anything, one aircraft launched quietly from the Abraham Lincoln's flight deck and climbed to altitude over the Strait of Hormuz. No fanfare, no announcement. Nothing that would tell an Iranian radar operator that the most consequential aircraft in the entire strike group had just taken off. It was not an F-35. It was not an F-18. It was an EA-18G Growler, an electronic warfare aircraft that carries no bombs, no anti-ship missiles, and nothing capable of destroying a target on the ground. What it carries instead are systems capable of something far more consequential than destruction. It can find any radio frequency being used in its operational area, identify what that frequency is being used for, and then listen to it, jam it, or break into it entirely. Tonight, its pilot, Lieutenant Commander Diana Reyes, had been given one specific mission: find the frequency Iran is using to talk to its missiles, and cut the conversation. Here is what you need to understand about how a modern anti-ship missile actually works, because this is the part that makes everything that follows so extraordinary. When Iran fires a cruise missile at a target, that missile does not fly blindly toward wherever the target happened to be at the moment of launch. It stays in constant communication with the fire control radar on the ground throughout its entire flight, receiving continuous updates about where the target is moving, adjusting its course in real time, and homing in with increasing precision as the distance closes. That communication link, the invisible radio signal connecting the radar on the Iranian coast to the missile flying low over the water, is the missile's nervous system. It is the thing that makes it dangerous. And it is exactly what Lieutenant Commander Reyes had been hunting for the previous 23 minutes. Think of it this way. Imagine you are guiding a remote-controlled vehicle toward a moving target, and someone standing next to you is holding a device that can find the exact frequency your remote is broadcasting on and flood it with noise. The moment that device switches on, your remote stops working. The vehicle keeps moving, but it cannot hear you anymore. It has no idea where the target went. It just travels in the direction it was already pointed until it runs out of road. That is exactly what the Growler does to a missile. And that is exactly what Lieutenant Commander Reyes was about to do to 12 of them at the same time. At 2:49, the Growler's electronic warfare systems detected the first sign that something was being prepared on the Iranian coast. A fire control radar coming online, sweeping the strait, building a targeting picture of the Abraham Lincoln's position. Reyes logged the frequency and cross-referenced it against the library of known Iranian naval radar signatures in the Growler's database. Confirmation came back in under 40 seconds. Cruise missile fire control radar, active, building a firing solution. She transmitted one compressed data burst to the strike group's tactical action officer aboard the Abraham Lincoln. They are preparing to fire. I have the frequency. Awaiting your call. The tactical action officer passed it up to the commanding officer. The commanding officer made his decision. Wait for launch, then take it. At 3:12, the Iranian battery fired all 12 missiles in a single salvo. A deliberate choice, designed to overwhelm the carrier's point defense systems by forcing them to engage 12 targets simultaneously rather than one at a time. The moment those missiles went active and their guidance systems came online, they began communicating with the fire control radar on the coast on the exact frequency Reyes had been watching for 23 minutes. She had been waiting for this, and the moment those 12 signals appeared on her display, she had confirmation of something even more valuable than the radar frequency itself. The encrypted data link channel Iran was using to send targeting updates to the missiles in flight. a specific narrowband frequency sitting at 4,835 MHz. The nervous system of 12 cruise missiles now flying at Mach 0.8 over the Strait of Hormuz. Reyes activated the Growler's jamming system and aimed it at that frequency with full power output. What happened next took approximately 1.3 seconds. The jamming signal hit the data link frequency like a wall of noise, flooding it completely and drowning out every targeting update the Iranian radar was trying to send. On the Iranian fire control radar screen, the operator watched his connection to all 12 missiles simultaneously go from green to red. He tried switching to a backup frequency. Standard procedure when jamming is detected. Reyes had anticipated this. The Growler systems had already identified the 3 most likely backup frequencies based on Iranian naval communication protocols and were ready to jam all 3 the moment any of them came active. The operator switched. Reyes jammed it in 0.8 seconds. He switched again. Jammed in 0.6 seconds. He had 1 backup frequency left. He switched to it at 3:14, and for approximately 2 seconds he had a partial connection to 4 of the 12 missiles before the Growler systems locked onto the new frequency and buried it in noise. The connection died. All 12 missiles were now completely on their own. And here is what a modern anti-ship cruise missile does when it loses contact with its fire control radar in mid-flight. It does not explode. It does not turn around. It does not find the target independently. It keeps flying in the direction it was pointed when the connection died, using only its last known heading and its onboard inertial navigation system. That system is accurate enough to bring the missile to approximately where the target was. It is not nearly accurate enough to hit a moving ship that has had time to maneuver. The Abraham Lincoln turned 15 degrees to port at 3:13. A standard defensive maneuver that moved the carrier approximately 800 meters from its previous position by the time the missiles reached the target area. 8 of the 12 missiles flew through empty ocean and impacted the water harmlessly, 2 to 4 kilometers from the carrier's actual position. 3 activated their terminal radar seekers in the final seconds of flight, found no target where they expected one, and crashed into the sea. 1 missile got close enough that the carrier's close-in weapon system tracked it as a precaution and then watched it fly past the ship and detonate in the water 400 meters off the port bow. The Abraham Lincoln was never touched. In the Combat Information Center, the commanding officer watched the last missile track disappear from the display and said nothing for about 4 seconds. Then he picked up the circuit to the air wing. "Good work, Reyes. Come home." Lieutenant Commander Diana Reyes had been airborne for 31 minutes. She had fired no weapons. She had destroyed nothing. She had found a frequency and filled it with noise, and 12 Iranian cruise missiles had flown themselves into the Strait of Hormuz without touching a single American ship. On the Iranian coast, the fire control radar operator stared at a screen showing 12 dead tracks and no connection to any of them. He knew exactly what had happened. And he also knew that somewhere above the strait, an American aircraft had just demonstrated something his commanders were going to have to think very carefully about. The missiles they had spent years developing and positioning as their primary deterrent against American naval power in the Gulf could be neutralized not by shooting them down, which costs millions of dollars per interceptor, but by finding one radio frequency and making noise on it, which costs essentially nothing. The economic logic of that is devastating. Iran spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars building a missile capability specifically designed to overwhelm American point defense systems through volume. The United States answered it with 1 aircraft and a jamming pod. The Abraham Lincoln resumed normal flight operations at 3:45, 33 minutes after Iran fired 12 missiles at it. The crew ate breakfast on schedule. The air wing launched its morning sorties on schedule. And somewhere above the Strait of Hormuz, the EA-18G Growler was already back in its landing pattern, its pilot running through post-flight checks, the jamming pod having done its work and gone quiet, waiting for the next frequency it would need to find and the next conversation it would need to end before anyone on the ship below ever had to reach for a weapons release. Iran fired 12 missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln. The United States did not even flinch. And the reason they did not flinch is the reason Iran's entire deterrent strategy in the Persian Gulf is going to need to be rebuilt from the ground up. Because the weapon they built to overwhelm American defenses through sheer numbers turned out to have a single point of failure that 1 pilot in 1 aircraft found in 40 seconds and exploited in 1.3 seconds.
12 missiles.
1 frequency. 0 American casualties. The Strait of Hormuz is still open. The Abraham Lincoln is still sailing.